Good evening. You're very welcome to Faith Matters. I'm David Hennessy. Today, I'd like to continue my conversation of last week with Eric Tafoya. Eric lives in San Bernardino, California, and he says of himself, every vice that you can think of, that was me, drugs all the way. From the age of 13 until 40, not a year went by that he did not spend time in either juvenile detention as a teen or in prison. Then he found himself facing a possible sentence of 25 years. His name is Eric Tafoya. So I let Eric take up the story himself from there.
It's great to be back on your show.
Well, it's great to have you back, Eric. Look,
And I'm excited, brother. Especially this Easter season, right? To just really give glory to God and everything that we're speaking about, our witness, our breath, our vocal cords, the things that we do with our hands and our feet, making sure they're a testament to the King who died for us on the cross and rose from the grave. And in this time of Easter, it's really a time I really believe for us to settle in on who Christ is in our lives, right? Building this divine relationship. Why? Because we got Pentecost coming up, man. So
yeah, the last time we were talking, you had been sent to prison
Yes.
because you had an accident and you were facing 25 years in jail. Now, this was only about 7 years ago or 8 years ago or something like that, I think. And you are not in jail. So could you just bring us through that to see what happened? What happened following your being sent to jail, and how did the sentence
Yeah,
pan
so it was
out?
August 19, 2016. His name is Randolph Stevenson, a very beautiful person. And so yes, now we're going through this kind of metanoia. I believe right now we're in this metanoia stage of my life where I've understood my flaws, all these imperfections that I've had, all these mistakes and bad choices that I've done in my life. And I've understood now the grace and mercy of God, not through the Jehovah Witnesses. Like, remember, you guys know I've gone through different denominations, right? It wasn't through non-denomination, and praise God for all those denominations. I'm not knocking it, but it was through Catholicism and the truth within the sacraments that actually started transforming my life. So I would go from one prison, like in the last one we were talking about, I was defending people with certain type of crimes in here. And because I knew God forgave me of my murder, I was defending those who were kind of like child molesters or maybe snitches, people will call them, or rapists or people who beat their women, but domestic violence. People usually get stabbed or beat up in their walls, defending them now. So then God would move me from this facility to another facility. And I was praying for it, brother. I really wanted to grow. I wanted to become Catholic because I wasn't Catholic yet, even though I was studying the catechism. I had a Catholic Bible. I understood the sacraments. I was praying my rosary every day, learning the Catholic prayers. I actually knew the Mass already. I had ran through the Mass so many times already in my head, and that was like 2.5 years right there. And so I prayed that God would put a priest in my life, that I would go up to there, I would get a college education. I was like, I had a goal. I had a vision that God gave me another chance at life. I should be doing life in prison. I should be having needles in my arms, but God was giving me another chance. And I said, I had to change. It's one thing, God gave us the ability to change, spiritually. He transforms us, right? But then we have to take care of our mental wellness, right? There's all this thinking. There's all this brokenness within our mind, also within our psyche. And so while I was in there, I knew I had to change that because I had been incarcerated before. I had been locked up before. I had read the Bible before. I had said Jesus before, but every time I got out, I would run back to my drugs. I would run back to the party. I would run back to my old way of life. I would not be productive. I wouldn't be who Christ needed me to be, let alone not even be his ambassador. But I would claim it while I was in prison. And a lot of men that are broken and women do that while they're in prison. We're broken. We're in a combined environment. We run to Jesus, right? Because we're there. We're sober. We're in a confined environment. It's like a dog in a confined environment. They're well behaved. But once you open up the cage, right? Because, if the dog's not trained, well, it's in that cage. When you open up the cage, the dog will go and run rampart because that's what dogs do. That's what they do.
Eric,
and so we as humans now, yeah.
Eric, tell me, how did you get to, you were being moved from one facility to another, and when would you learn what your sentence would be and how many years were you sentenced to?
So, like in the last episode, we were talking about this one. I was saying that I was facing 25 years to life. I went to trial, and I would face trial for like 2 years. And in that 2 years is where I really started praying and trusting in God And
Yes.
then finally, through the trials and through going back to court, eventually they would say that they saw the video, and they would say that they saw I didn't kill him on purpose. The reason why the three-strike law was taken away from me and I didn't get life, and why they didn't give me a higher prison term, it was just, man, it was my lifestyle causes the murder, okay? But when you look on the video and everything, it was, man, it was like a freak accident almost,
Yeah.
it just happened to be at that wrong spot at the wrong time. Not like I was chasing this guy down.
Yeah.
And so when they
Yeah.
saw that, they told me, we're going to give you 10 years. And then not even just 10 years, they told me they were going to get 10 years with 50%, bro. I started crying. I actually dropped on my knees and I said, I deserve more. And my public defender's like, no, they saw this and this is what you're going to get. Make use of it. And she told me, don't go back to your old ways when you get out. And I just got on my knees and started praying. And I said I wouldn't. And so, and then they would move. Then that's when I would find out. That would probably be in 2017. I would find out like late 2017, because then they would transfer me to Kern, and they would transfer me to Chuckawalla State Prison after that. And while I would go to Chuckawalla State Prison, I would go on the yard and I would be like, yeah, I'm about to be around the Catholic Church, about to get my faith on. And the thing about that is that there was no Catholics on the yard. There was not a priest on the yard. We didn't have a chaplain. There was a lot of Protestant denominations. Anybody who was Catholic converted to Protestantism, which happens a lot in jail. Protestants are big on reaching out to the prisoners. You know, we as Catholics, we've lost that completely. Like, we think that they're the scum of the earth, and, you know, sometimes Catholicism becomes like a rich man's religion. And I'm saying this all respectfully, you know, the socialites in the higher class are running to it, while the lower class and the marginalized are running to like non-denominational churches and the various. That's why they're growing into huge, these non-denominational churches, and they're filled with all Catholics. We call it the biggest religion in the country, in the United States, is fallen away Catholics. So that's the biggest religion that we have, are Catholics that have fallen away from the church.
And Eric, so you're in that prison, but you had learned your sentence to, what was it reduced? It was reduced to 10 years with just to serve 5. Is that it?
Just to serve 5. Just to serve 10 to serve 80%, which would have been 8 years. And then they had a law that knocked it down to 6.5 years, which is 66%. And then you can knock down your term while you're in there. So while I'm in there, I'm facing 10 years. I have to do 6.5 years. All right.
Yeah.
But then the law passes to where it drops to 6.5. And so now I have 6.5 years instead of the 80%. Instead of 8 years, I only have to face 6.5 years now. Okay. Because it was 80% first and it dropped to 66. Then while I was in there, I attained 2 college degrees. Attaining those college degrees gave me time off. So it gave me a year off. On top of that, attaining the self-help groups, facilitating them, like I'm going to get into right now, dropped another 6 months off. So I was able to get a little under 5 years. I was able to get out in.
Oh, thank God!
That's how I was able to get out earlier.
So when did you get out of jail? What year was it?
I got out. I got out May 2nd. It's been 5 years actually. I just celebrated my 5-year. I've been out for 5 years on May 2nd on the feast day of Saint Athanasius of Alexandria. He's my patron saint. That's a whole other story. Let me go through this real quick. Okay? So while I'm in prison, all right?
Yeah.
I go to Chuckawalla State Prison. There's no Catholics there, right? I'm like, so I start doing it with the Protestants. I do, because I was Protestant before. I was non-denominational, so I can kick it with our brothers. They may not have the full truth. They may only have like 20% of the truth. Hey, but they got some of the truth, you know, and I still flock with. They know Jesus. I'll still fellowship with them, not out here, but while I'm in prison, I'll do that. You know, I try to help my Catholic brothers out here. I got time to kick it with no Protestants out here unless I'm converting them, and that's me. I want to give them the fullness of truth. Jesus built a church 2,000 years ago. That is the Catholic Church. And he said to add to his church, not build 40,000 different denominations. That's division. And he says he wants us to be one, not all divided in this weirdness of fighting each other. Anywho, I love everybody who loves Jesus. But, you know, I just want to bring them to the fullness of truth. So while I'm in there, I start preaching with them. I start going to their circles. I'm wearing the rosary in there, like really loving them. Like, every day we're hanging out, Bible studies after dinner, I'm part of the worship team. I actually sang at their Christmas banquet. You know, I did a solo at their Christmas banquet. My rosary on, you know. I'm hearing all all the theology trying to knock the church all the time, but I'm like, you know what? I'll deal with this when it comes. As I'm there, I look on a shelf, bro, and I see the Catholic Survival Guide. It's an amazing book by Catholic Answers. I'm telling you, in this book, it has Peter Kreeft, Scott Hahn, Trent Holm, Jimmy Aiken, Carlo Broussard, Carl Keating, Patrick Madrid, Tim Staples, like, dude, like all the heavy hitters. Joey Heschmeyer. It's a survival guide for Catholics by Catholic Answers, and it teaches you how to defend the faith, what we believe, what are the sacraments, what's the seed of Peter, you know, everything about Mama Mary, you know, church history, everything you can think about to defend against each of these denominations that consistently attack the church that Jesus built. Because that's what they do. When they don't believe in our faith, when they don't believe in our teachings, and so I loved it. I fell in love. I read the whole book. I was like, and it's not all of it, but a majority. It was like a 1,500-page book. The sections that I liked, the sections that I wanted, the Catholic apologetics I wanted. There's certain Catholic apologetics I wanted, so I read it, and I was like, man, this is amazing. I would actually write Catholic Answers, and they would send me hundreds of books while I was incarcerated. They would, not just for me, but for other brothers that were in there. They'd send some Spanish stuff to us. They really looked out. Even when we needed help with like questions on predestination, on church history, Catholic Answers would always support. That's why I have a lot of love for Catholic Answers. I will be on Catholic Answers live answering questions on the 20th of June. I'll be on Catholic Answers. That's a blessing right there. So while I'm with these Protestants, I'm part of the circle, going to services with them, but I'm still praying my rosary and doing my thing. I let them know I'm Catholic, right? One day I'm working out on the yard. So I'm working out on the yard. I'm getting it. I was 215 pounds. I love working out. Physical workout's everything. If anybody's listening out there, it's not about having a goal. I want to look at my body and be vain. No, it's about having longevity of life, being able to do things at 60 like you were doing when you were 30. I knew guys that were 80 years old in prison, and they were working out like harder than me. It's just like, you know, it's something that gives you longevity of life, peace of mind. It's good for the spirit. But while I'm working out, I look across the yard, bro, and I see a tall African man with a baby blue, like, sun hat on. It's 115 degrees where we're at in this prison, okay? I'm in this prison. It's an honor yard. I'm in a welding program. I'm going to college. And then I see this black guy, and I'm like, hey, who's this guy in all black? Like, I knew it was a priest already. Like, I looked across the yard, and I was like, I know that's a priest. Like, I know it. And just imagine, I used to have long hair down to the middle of my back, and I go running across the yard, and I'm like, Father! And he, like, looks at me kind of crazy, like, who's this guy, you know? And I was just so, his name was Father Titus Evie. I just emailed him 3 weeks ago, and he just responded to me, telling me how happy he is for me. He was my first spiritual director. I would become the Catholic facilitator while I was in there. I would teach apologetics. I would teach catechism of the Catholic Church. We would bring men into the church. I would help set up the altar every week. I would lecture. I would pick the lectures every week. God was just blessing me. I was growing in my position as a leader in the faith. And then when the Protestants saw it, they all started attacking me. But what they didn't realize is I had armor, like they never knew about. I had the deposit of faith now, because remember, I was already a Bible-reading Christian. I would go to prison and read the Bible, so I knew the Bible already. Now I had history, church fathers, and the apologetics behind me. Oh, man, you can't touch me. And every one of the Protestants that would come up to me, I would destroy them. Their deacons, their elders, anybody was. And I was adamant. I was pulling out of the Bible. And so many times when I'd be by myself, they're like, Eric, I know you're telling me the truth, but I can't leave my church, because it was more of a social thing in there, right? They had brotherhood, where Catholics didn't have that. There was no, when I went in there was no brotherhood. There was no Catholics in there. And so, of course, I would stop talking with them, because then I would start debating them about baptism. It was fun, though, but then men started growing in there, and then other Catholics now, right? They started seeing me, and then they started coming out of the woodworks. And then where usually there's not Catholic Bible studies in there, we started doing Catholic Bible studies. We started watching movies on the faith. I had a translator translating, because it's all about Jesus. But if we don't teach them, our people perish and they die because of a lack of knowledge. Being a nice person isn't enough. They have to have this relationship with God through the sacraments, through our Mama Mary, through the communion of saints, through the Eucharist, and understanding what truly the Eucharist is, the body and blood of Christ.
Tell me, so you were in the yard and you saw this Father Titus. I thought when you first mentioned it, I thought he was a prisoner, but he was
he was a priest.
He was ministering there. He'd gone into the jail to minister.
Yeah, he did go into the jail to minister. And the thing about this, it was his first time ever being a prison priest. So you got to understand, he always worked at hospitals. So that's a different type of facility, right?
Yeah.
It's a completely different type of facility. And so now being in a prison, he kind of had the mind state at times where it was kind of like he's doing his job, but he's working around prisoners, right? He didn't see it like Jesus would have saw it at first. And it's all right, because we're all humans. This is where we all grow as humans, right? And he would kind of be like, oh, yeah, he made a comment one day that all prisoners, they leave the Bible at the door. And that's a comment that a lot of prison guards will use. This is a comment that a lot of people in society that like to belittle this population of people will always say, oh, they leave the Bible at the door. And well, it's true. With me and Father Titus, the reason why he said it is because I was pushing more Bible studies. I was pushing more catechism. I was pushing more teaching. And he was like, Eric, why are you caring so much? Why are you pushing it so hard? Nobody else is pushing to do all these things like you're doing. I said, because Father, they're going to get out one day, and I need to teach them right now while they're incarcerated. And you know what? We became the bestest of friends. He taught me how to start becoming a man. He taught me how to shut up and listen. You know, he did. We learned from one another, and we grew from one another, and it was such a beautiful thing. And yeah, we should be hanging out. I really pray that within the next month or two that me and him I'm taking him out to eat, because he's actually working not far from where I live, and I will be going back into the prison soon. So I'm really excited about that. He really taught me how to be Catholic.
So his father,
stop taking the Eucharist.
His name is Father Titus. What's his surname? His last name?
Father Titus Ebe.
Ebe.
IBE. He works at Chino Institute for Women right now. He works at a women's prison right now.
Good for him. God bless him. God bless him. So Eric,
yeah, he showed me how to do like the Holy Salt. You know, that time in prison and being around him really helped me grow as an individual, because I would meet a person named Marciano who worked for the pastoral center in our diocese for restorative justice. I would meet him only by chance that Father Titus trusted in me, and they were doing an audit on Father Titus, and Father Titus chose me to be the person. And when I went out there, I met Marciano, and it was God. It was God sent, because you know what, bro? Like that day in prison, I would meet Marciano, and he would hook me up with a program called the Bridges Program. And when I would get out of prison, they would set me up with a mentor, bro. Like if God was setting it up for me, like I was getting the degrees. I had a degree in theology. I was getting out with a degree in social and behavioral science. I facilitated like anger management, domestic violence, AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous. I became a competent leader with Toastmasters International. I was an extreme introvert, extreme antisocial my entire life. I was a drug addict my entire life. Now I become a competent leader and competent communicator with Toastmasters International, Lifers Group, Gang Members Anonymous, Substance Abuse Treatment Group, Celebrate Recovery. Any group that I could do, I could change, I needed it. I had to be a part of it. I had to not just be a part of it, I had to help teach it, because I wanted it to be engraved in my brain, because I had so much thinking, bro. I was so broken. I was so tore up from the floor up of all that years of violence, all those years of brokenness that I really needed to transform. I just didn't want to be that person that Jesus saved, and I go to prison and like I get out and I don't do nothing. It's easy for people to do something bad, and then they get out and they don't serve God. They just live a good life. You know, they don't.
Eric, tell me this. So you were freed 5 years ago. Now,
Yeah.
in all your previous occasions, you'd been in jail since you were been in detention since you were
Yeah.
13
Yeah.
until 5 years ago. Now, tell me, was it very hard for you to adapt when you got out and said, now this time I'm not going back to jail? Was it very hard for you to
Yeah.
adapt to outside life, outdoor life? And what did you do? How did you get over prison and sort of shake it out of your system and adapt to life outside, to say it like that?
Mhm.
That was, you've been 5 years outside now. So
Yeah. How did I adapt to it? Yeah.
how
You know
did you
what,
do that?
bro? You know what it was, bro? Like I was preparing myself already in there. You understand that? Like I was a
Yes.
leader. Like a lot of times people see me out here and they just think I'm a leader. Oh, you've only been out of prison for 5 years and I've only been serving the church out here. And I tell them, no. I was serving the church like a big dog while I was in prison too. And I was building myself. The
Yes.
Lord was engraving me with gold. The Lord was engraving me. Like I had to prepare myself while I was in prison to trust in God, trust in His providence, trust in the things that He has over our lives. And so you're talking about getting out, right? And how to prepare for that adversity. I was already ready for it, for the prayers, right? Because you got to practice your faith. You got to live it out. That's one thing that God really told me is like, Eric, I gave you the sacraments, right? So that you can live in victory. I gave you the sacraments so that you can live in them, not just do it sometimes, right? Because they're a necessity. And so I already understood this. I just remember, just real quick, before I leave prison, while I was in prison, I got confirmed. I got confirmed by Father Romy Seleccion from our diocese, okay? So I got confirmed while I was in prison. And not only me, but I brought in 6 brothers, bro. So like, and I got 2 godsons while I was in there. So not only me, but my bunkie became Catholic, and he was extremely anti-Catholic. He was reading all kinds of weird stuff. And he became Catholic. 6 people from my dorm became Catholic, and it was just a beautiful thing that the week before I would leave, okay, it's Holy Week, right? It's Holy Week, it's COVID, I'm about to get out of prison, I built this relationship, me and the guys are already crying because we have this relationship of doing Bible studies with each other every day. We were like the apostles, you understand that? We were just like, people don't understand it. They don't understand the relationship, this bond that we built in there. We would study the Word of God every day. We would pray every day together. For years, I was around these men. And then, like, I never really talked about that, but to lose them, and then to come out here, like, that's one of the biggest things that I had to deal with, was going from having all my brothers to having nobody, and then everybody looking at me like I'm a monster out here. Everybody not seeing Jesus in me. Yeah, some people did. Don't get me wrong. I got some beautiful people in my life. Annie McCarthy, Lucy Contreras, Danny Centurioni, Ralph Segarra. There's some amazing people that have been here. And because I'm all tattooed up, Hey, yeah, I'm all tattooed. Yeah, they're all below my neck. But one of the hardest things with getting out is not having my brothers. Not having them around me to build them up and speak life in them, because when I try to do it out here at first, everybody just saw my past. They just see my tattoos and they don't see what Jesus is doing.
Yes.
So I think that was one of the biggest things to get used to. And then it was COVID. And then all my family rejected me, bro. Like, I was supposed to live with my grandma. She had people living with her. And now, like, a week after I got out, I'm on the streets and I have nowhere to go. And I'm breaking down, and I'm like, Lord, I have a job. Like, I already had a job. Like 4 days after I got out, I got a job. But I was like, Lord, I know you didn't bring me this far for me to go back to my old ways. I know you didn't. I was walking down the street, and I was thinking about going to an old girlfriend's house. I was, bro. And I walked in front of this church. See, that's what I'm saying. When I was a Protestant, I would always go back to my old ways because I didn't have the sacraments, the sacramentals. But this day, I went walking down the street, and there was a Catholic church in Loma Linda, California. I'm walking down the road. I had just got out. I've been out for like maybe 5 days. I got a job. I'm already feeling the hurt of being lonely. I feel like I'm struggling out here a little bit, and I'm like, Lord, but I've already been to Mass. That was the first thing I did when I got out. I've already been to Mass a couple of times. I need Mass. And And I remember I saying, Lord, I can't go. I know you didn't save me for this. And there was a Catholic church, St. Joseph the Worker in Loma Linda, and there was a Mama Mary statue. I was just at that statue a few weeks ago. And I went there and I said, I know this isn't how my life is supposed to be. And I got on my knees and I prayed the rosary. I really did. I got on my knees and I prayed that rosary. And it's just like, boom, I just felt this trust and this confidence in God. Trust and confidence in God and what he was going to do, right? The next day, I got my parole officer was able to find me a room to share. And all I would have to do is pay $600. And I was like, you know what? Let's do it. So for the first time in my life, I would be independent. This would be the first time ever at the age of 40 years old that I would be independent, that I would understand how it would be to take care of myself. For a lot of other humans and individuals, it's like, yeah, they've been doing it their whole life. But for me, I was a homeless, drug addict, manipulator of women. I was a loser for my whole life. And for the first time, God was allowing me to take care of myself.
Well, we'll have to leave it there for today. I look forward to having you back with us this time next week when I'll continue with my conversation with Eric. And don't forget, you can listen back to this program and previous programs on my podcast, David Hennessy, Finding Happiness, both on YouTube and Spotify. For now, good night and God bless.